Everyone, for those who wish to participate, we'll now stand to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And for the record, our entire board is in attendance, including our student trustee, Mr. Abeshi. The next item is 2.5, longevity recognitions, but no one is present today for the recognitions, so we will move on to approval of the minutes for.
Wait, you were going to take, you were going to swear in student trustee, but you're going to take that out of order.
Oh, okay. Trustee Abeshi, you get to be sworn in.
Oh. Sorry, you'll have to repeat.
Okay, this is,
Sorry.
I'll do it slowly. So raise your right hand, repeat after me. I've never done this before. Raise your right hand, repeat after me. I, and say your name, solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
I think I'm just sorry.
Go next to him and then you
Hey,
can be together.
Can you get a little closer together?
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe in the front? Here?
Yeah, go on the,
Go in the front here.
What about the
about the
mic problem?
Right here,
They're
here,
fine.
here, here.
Angie's on it.
Why don't we,
oh, she solved the microphone problem.
okay,
Stand here.
okay,
It's like
okay. Start over. I repeat your name, solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
I, Kenny Igbechi, solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter. Thank you.
Congratulations.
It's hot.
Okay. Are we on the minutes now?
Yes.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes for the regular meeting of May 23, 2019, and the special meeting of May 30, 2019?
I move to approve the minutes for both meetings.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is your mic on?
It is now. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Wait,
All those against?
Discussion.
Excuse?
discussion?
Marcia, trustee Croninger.
In the May 23rd minutes, correct me if I'm wrong, but it says, Dr. Haslam noted he had received an inquiry from the Bacara Resort asking if the college would consider providing a VA program in our hotel management program. I thought that was your comment.
It was.
Oh,
I didn't catch that. With,
All right.
with trustee Nielsen, will you accept that as an amendment to your motion?
Most certainly.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Hearing none, the motion passes. I want to also report at this time that we held our board retreat on June 14th. We held it off-site as we ordinarily do. And as we ordinarily do, we did not have a video, but we attempted to record the meeting by audio, and we have encountered difficulties with the audio tape. So it's still being worked on, and maybe it'll be resurrected, but at this time, we do not have an audio version for that meeting. There will be minutes prepared, and I will add that a big portion of the meeting will be reflected in the board goals, which we will discuss later in the meeting. That was a major portion of our June 14th meeting. Before we go to public comment, I also want to announce that the website for our superintendent president search is up and running. And anybody interested in more information about the search process can visit presidentsearch.sbcc.edu. That's presidentsearch, one word, .sbcc.edu. And now we will turn to public comments. And at this time, members of the public have the opportunity to directly address the board on any item of interest to the public that is within the jurisdiction of this board that is not an item noticed on this agenda. I note that each speaker has 5 minutes, and there's a clock on the screen behind me. I'll try to warn each speaker when 2 minutes are left, although because I have to turn around and look, I don't always get it exactly on time. So with that, I will invite Celeste Barber for her comments.
Don't look, Graham. Good afternoon, can you hear me? Is that okay? Trustees and Dr. Benjamin. I'd just like to speak for a few minutes about the issue of public access to your meetings and also public comment. It's rather a challenge to come here and to find a place to park. And I know that you folks want more people to come here and watch what's going on so we can can participate. So if there's anything that you can do to make it easier for the public to park here. What I did today was I came earlier in the day, I was out and about, and I went to the kiosk and I asked the security person there, what to do, and she didn't really know, so what she did was she gave me an all-day pass. And then when I came back this afternoon, I was able to park on East Campus, upper parking lot over toward where the student store is, over in that area. That was fine. That was terrific for me. And my memory, when I used to teach here, I always taught a late afternoon class. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you can always get parking spaces on either West Campus or East Campus, so a Thursday 4 o'clock meeting should not be a challenge. I would also recommend, if in your agenda, when it's published online, if you could have a statement there directing the public how to go about getting a parking pass. That would be helpful, so they could come here at 3:30, go to the kiosk, not have to turn around, go somewhere else, and I hope be directed to park somewhere on East Campus. It would really be beneficial, so I'd sure appreciate that. The second thing is public comment, and for the agendized items that the public would like to speak to, I would recommend that you allow them to fill out the public comment card up until the point that the agenda item is being considered. I know they do that at City Council instead of just at 4 o'clock. One reason for that is some folks can't sit here during the entire meeting, and they see that agenda item is later on, so they thought, okay, I'll come here at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. And it would be helpful for them if they could fill out the public comment card to the agenda item prior to it being considered. So I hope you'll take those two suggestions in the positive spirit in which they are intended. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those suggestions. Our next public speaker is Denise Adams.
Good afternoon. Nice to be here. Sorry I missed some of the past meetings, and I've been out of town, and I will look forward to calling you Dr. Benjamin. Thank you for your kind letter. Denise Spangler and Adams, and I would like to address again that we, on behalf of several people in the community, would like to have a full investigation of trustee Jonathan Abood. We have asked for it before. He has a conflict being a community activist and then serving as a trustee. His postings on Facebook are grossly inappropriate. There are references to his position at City College, so when you do a random survey of the public and ask if this is Jonathan or if this is the college's position, people think it's the college's. My understanding, we raised this issue with you before because on May 9th, he said that he wanted to make the white people politically irrelevant. We raised this issue with it. That's racist. There will be a complaint filed with the Civil Rights Commission against Mr. Abood. You had a special meeting on June 14th. Conveniently, we don't know why you had it off campus, off the premises at a remote location. The public would like to have that matter addressed, why it was not here. Conveniently, the tape is blank. There is no recording of the conversations. We had specifically asked that his conduct be evaluated. So that meeting, technically, we will be asking for it to be null and void because under the Brown Act, there needs to be a transcript. There's no transcript of your conversation, so there's nothing coming back to us. It was our understanding from a letter that was sent to us from Mr. Robert Miller, an email, that at that meeting, you specifically addressed that Mr. Abood needs to decide if he's going to be a trustee of this college or a community activist and to separate his hats. He's obviously unable to do that because, again, he put a Facebook post after your meeting on June 14th, Facebook post again on June 22nd against ICE in the community, against the federal government, despite the fact that he took an oath to uphold the U.S. Constitution here. He took an oath. You all took that oath. This is a federal jurisdictional matter, and it's again convoluted. Then he goes on to draw the analogy with Jewish concentration camps. Very insulting to many of our major donors who happen to be Jewish, who believe in this institution, who support it, have given millions of dollars to Santa Barbara City College. And if you can't control Mr. Abood and you don't want to investigate him, and conveniently you're meeting at Antioch or wherever, you got a blank tape, we want the meeting recalled, redone. We want the public to see and hear what your conversation is related to Mr. Abood, and how you're going to censor him, sanction him, or ask him to resign. He either needs to be a community activist, and in his postings he'll put Vice Chairman, Santa Barbara City College, or Trustee, Santa Barbara City College.
You have a minute and a half remaining.
Thank you. It needs to be cleaned up. It's very alienating and confusing to the public. We ask for a full investigation. It's obvious he wants, as he says, he wants to make white people politically irrelevant. That's a racist statement, especially as I pointed out at 2 meetings back. He happens to be white himself, but as he said, he's an Arab white. And as we learned today from the United States Supreme Court on the census, we still don't know if they're going to allow a box so he could check that he's Arab, Middle Eastern, to remove himself from the pack of whites that he obviously does not like. But it's very confusing, and you have to have some board policies and standards on the use of Santa Barbara City College's name on these Facebook posts. He's running conversations with somebody who has a lawsuit against you. He's running conversations with Darcel Elliott, who works for Doss Williams, and it's out of control. We have screenshots and we have all of our evidence. It's a violation of civil rights. Thank you.
Okay. Denise, thank you for your comments, but you also wanted to speak on items 5.2 and 5.3, although
Correct.
there will be no report tonight on those items. If you would like to still
I
offer
would.
your comments at this time, that would be acceptable.
I'd like to address item number 5.2 on the Academic Senate. The Academic Senate President, which I understand will be serving for still another year for the Academic Senate, she has, as you know, there's pending litigation regarding her behavior to censure and stifle public comment. She also happens to be the advisor for the Channels newspaper. Because I go to a lot of city council meetings, board of supervisors meetings, Santa Barbara Unified School District meetings, and other meetings, I hear from reporters in town. You don't want somebody advising the students at the Channels who has a political agenda which prohibits them from reporting the full news to not only to the students and student government, but to the community. We have an issue with Patricia Stark, who's president of your faculty senate. If she's president of the faculty senate and has an agenda to stifle the public, perhaps she needs to step down as advisor to the channel or step down as the faculty senate chair. That was my comment on the faculty senate. And I also submitted one for the Associated Students, which is item number 5.3. Our concern with the position of the student trustee, and this is, don't take this personal because you're wonderful, Kenny and Mr. Trustee Abechi, and very competent and qualified. However, our community college district has boundaries. You each represent a certain defined boundary. This is Santa Barbara Community College. It's not a university. It's not a state college. It's not here to serve people from other parts of California, the United States, or in the case of Mr. Becci, from Nigeria, or from anywhere else. We've had multiple student trustees since Michael Warnken was here. I think that was your first year on the board, if I remember, Dr. Haslam. We've had multiple international students in this position. And it seems to us that at some point it's only appropriate for the board policy to consider that priority be given by the student government when they select a representative to this board, that they be a student within our district as first choice, second choice, a student from within Santa Barbara County, third choice within the state of California, and then go out. It's very difficult to comprehend how a foreigner, just like if I'm in England or if I'm in Nigeria, that I can take an oath of allegiance to the Nigerian constitution to uphold it when I'm an American. I don't have dual loyalty. I'm an American. I may have been to 119 different countries, but I've never sworn my loyalty to any country I've been in. And so I'm asking you again, if in fact it's an issue, perhaps Trustee Abichi, you could take to the student government, but it's certainly a board policy because it was on your agenda to discuss the parameters and the role of the student trustee. On behalf of the community, we would like to see first priority coming from the students out of Carpinteria Unified, Santa Barbara Unified, and the area that we serve. And then if we can't find anybody in our district, go into Hancock and then into California. But it's very complicated, and we saw when we were explaining your lawsuits on the civil rights issues, we saw how it took a lot of time, attorney time, paid attorney time, to explain the US Constitution, discrimination law, how race relations were in the United States, what the parameters were when we're dealing with foreign students, and you would hope that if they came out of the United States, they would know something about US history, but certainly out of our district, they should know how the law works. So that was our concern on the students, and that's a decision for the board. We hope you'll calendar. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Miller, I think Ms. Adams is done, but the clock actually wasn't reset for the second or third item, but I think she's done. So Denise, just to know, if you had anything else to say, I know the clock kept going and it wasn't reset, but I think you concluded your comments. But you technically would have had more time, I'm saying, if the clock would have been reset. Did you have 3 speaker items or just 2?
I'm sorry.
Did you have 3 speaker items?
No, those were the speaker slips that I
Yeah,
read,
so the
yes.
clock wasn't reset for your third one. and so I just wanted to
No,
acknowledge. But
I completely
I think you're done.
exhausted everything, and it's issues for student government and the trustees, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, when I don't look at you, I'm hard of hearing, and I have my hearing aids on, but I don't hear you when my back's to you, so I'm sorry.
No, I
Thank
felt like you concluded, but I just wanted to make
Thank
sure that, yeah, no problem.
Okay, we're moving to item 6, development of the consent agenda. And I will advise the board that the following items that will be removed, are already being removed from the consent agenda: 9.3, 9.4, 9.5, 9.10, and 9.12. Otherwise, the consent items, other than the ones I just identified, that are subject to the consent agenda are contained in items 7, 8, and 9, through 9.14 is the last one. So it's from 7.1 through 9.14 with the removal of the items I read earlier. Is that clear? Okay.
Could you, I think I'd like to have you repeat 9.3.
The ones we're removing?
5, and then
9.3, 9.4, 9.5,
okay.
then 9.10 and 9.12.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you want to know about requests to remove?
That's the next sentence to come. Are there any others that any board member would like to have removed from the consent agenda? For discussion, yeah. Trustee Croninger.
I have a question that is general about our stipends, which doesn't necessarily mean it gets removed. It's a kind of a general clarification question. And then I would also like us to discuss 9.9.
So as to the stipend issue, what number is that one? If you know?
8.2.
8.2.
8.2.
Okay.
Do you want a motion in a second before we discuss it, or do you want to?
Yeah, so.
You don't need it pulled, right?
well,
You just want to discuss it?
It's uncertain to me whether you want 8.2 removed, or you just want to make a comment before we,
It's not a comment so much as a question. I think
Okay.
we could deal with it first and then,
okay.
I mean, I found myself, the lists are changing a bit, and I'm sure that means that everybody is thinking hard about how to present these lists. But it also leaves me with less of an understanding of why we're making the changes. And so I was moved to look up the definition of stipend, which I had in my head being a payment for something in addition to your regular job. That's how I kind of thought about it. And I looked it up, and apparently the Department of Labor has a totally different definition, which has to do with whether you're an employee or whether you're a student learning and being trained for something. And it has to do with, I guess, how you report all this information. Now, those don't necessarily have to match up, but it occurred to me that I don't really understand what we call a stipend versus what we call an employee who is happening to get paid another chunk of money. Why are we making that distinction, and how?
Dr. Ralston, can you respond to that?
Now that I know the question, if this answer doesn't suffice, I can come back next time with something a little more definitive. In the context of an educational institution, in particular here at Santa Barbara City College, the use of the term stipend only is applied to someone who is already an employee. Sometimes we'll use the term honorarium in an educational environment, which would correspond to something that you're thinking maybe the Department of Labor would have used. For us, we have two types of stipends. We have those that are governed by the Non-Teaching Compensation Committee, and that is to help regulate work that is outside the classroom. Chair stipends, for example, are part of that work, overseen by that committee and includes a formula and a lot of important detail with that. And then we have infrequent and occasional stipends for special, extra, interesting project work. And so we've been trying to help distinguish what those look like inside the report, and it's kind of an ongoing improvement project that my office is working on with the addition of a new administrative assistant, me learning more about the way that our stipend process works. And so we're actually striving for greater clarity. So I appreciate that question, and I can come back. Maybe our next one will include a definition of stipend. So if that's helpful.
No, I appreciate the explanation, and maybe when you do come back, I mean, it's sort of like, okay, we've changed things to add transparency. Here's what we did and why.
Okay,
You know.
I can do that.
Thank you.
Great.
Could I add to that? It seems to me, and I guess I'd like you to check this out because I may be wrong, but it seems to me over time, and over a long period of time, the numbers and amounts of the stipends have increased. That we've sort of crept up to, well, this list is pretty close to $250,000.
Oh, right, yes.
And,
yeah.
that has to do with actually taking the time to add the numbers.
Right.
That's a lot of money, especially when we're looking at shortfalls and looking to reduce spending or increase revenue. In this case, I would look very carefully at such a list to say, can we do without this?
So one of the things that I'm interested in is creating a document so that you can see the different funding types and maybe organizing it in that way. So because we have been exceptionally gifted at earning the right to have awards, federal grants, we have special funding that when we allocate resources to faculty for doing the work that goes with those grants, they're paid something called a stipend.
Right.
So that looks like extra resources out of the institution, but those aren't general funds. We also use our categorical funds to be able to increase and improve services outside the regular amount of work that someone does. We also call those stipends. And then we have this work that we govern. The chair is a perfect example. So in the Department of Math, the chair does an enormous amount of work for which he or she's paid additionally on top of that teaching load responsibility to do that work, and that's called a stipend. Different colleges organize that differently and how that works with payroll, and so part of our system is we have grown in the amount of stipends because we've had these increased funding sources to create innovation. And we've also governed our compensation in a way that seems separate from the way payroll would normally be presented to a board of trustees in this matter. So this is a little bit of an internal complexity that is Santa Barbara City College. And if you were to chart it, Trustee Haslund, you would be correct that because we've had increased resources that have gone through this process, that number would go up.
I'm excluding grants as a source. I'm just thinking of tapping the general fund for extra stipends. Yeah. And I mean, I look at our budget and I get a little I get a lot nervous. And it's very clear to me that we're going to have to do some major trimming or create that tree on which money grows and dedicate its growth to Santa Barbara City College. Not having a lot of faith in the latter, I'm going to be looking at the former.
I am hopeful about the latter.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Nielsen.
Thank you. These questions are, the way I see it, stem from two reasons. First, we've got this budget situation we're looking at, which causes us to look even harder.
Yes.
And so some of us, at least, because of the Brown Act, we haven't had it an item at the board where we've delved into it, have asked questions, and are been looking at these rising costs and things. And then all of a sudden we see what it looks like maybe the metrics are changing on how we measure it, and we're going, oh, what are they doing here? And it makes it really hard to compare what we did in the past to what we have now. So then we have to take a really deep look into it. So I very, very much appreciate your explanation. And it was overdue and very badly needed, and could have saved me a few hours at minimum trying to figure out what's going on here, because we're starting to look.
Good.
So we really need that explanation to help us understand what we're reading. Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you.
Trustee Gallardo.
Yeah, my only, Dr. Ralston, thank you. I don't know if I don't know if you're so kindly hanging out. I don't know if just in case. My only question, and I guess it's more of a Lindsay, so we're approving 7.4, and that's our short-term personnel, that's our hourlies for this next coming term. And so we're approving that before we approve our tentative budget, and I know we're finding money everywhere. So the statute, it's like August 1st by the time people would have to be given notice that that job won't be needed in the fall. Or my concern is that we're approving this, all these hourlies, and that is the next place where we would be cutting if we had to cut, is hourlies. But we're approving them, and we're approving them through the year, and then we haven't approved our budget yet. And I'm not suggesting we not approve this. I guess in my head, it's a complicated thing that we're doing, is we're approving something without knowing if we're going to have how much more of a deficit we're going to go into.
That's true. Yes, that's correct. We're not in a position we don't feel we're in a position right now to make those kinds of cuts. We're in the process, and James is going to speak to it when he talks about the budget.
Yeah.
But we know we're going to have to make more cuts as the year goes on, but we are not in a position to do that right now. And in terms of, just the only deadline we have in terms of, I didn't want to talk about cuts tonight in that way, especially around employees, because we're not making that kind of recommendation. But the only deadline you have is with certificated faculty, and that's a March 15th notice. And that cannot apply in this year because we have missed that deadline.
Right.
And that would be in the next, in the 2021 year. If that were to occur, we'd have to notify that group of people who fall into the certificated category, faculty and managers, of non-renewal.
Right.
But those are the only ones under any kind of deadline, as far as I know.
Yeah, and I'm sensitive to this because, being a classified employee of the college many years ago, both a student and classified, and if you're ever on campus on fall, our hourlies are the ones holding so much of student services down, and so it's a complicated thing here because hourlies are clearly needed to supplement so much of the work that happens here, but it's such a unknown going forward. So that's good. Thank you. And then my other question was, is there anything we can do around the academic calendar? Just looking at December 21, 22, and 23rd, that week, those 3 days prior to Christmas. The college is open, and this may be for future, but I know, it's kind of a ghost town around here. I know when I worked here in January, you're kind of hanging out in student services by yourself. And so is there anything that we can do around budgeting with the college?
This calendar is for 2 years out, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, for 2021, yes.
Right. And in my experience, all of that's negotiated.
Okay.
And so that's not something we should be talking about publicly anyway with certain groups. But believe me, we're thinking of every available opportunity.
And I trust you guys to do that, so thank you.
Okay.
So, we done? I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Trustee Croninger, do you still want to remove 8.2 from the consent calendar? Are you satisfied with the?
No, 8.2 was the broader question, and I appreciate, maybe we'll get an even more detailed explanation.
Yeah, what
of
we'll
that.
try to do is bring you more information so that you really understand how it works, and maybe that can be a study session topic
So where we're at
in
is.
your future.
Thank you. Where we're at is 9.9 is being removed from the consent calendar. With that, having said that, is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I think there was another question on 9.7, is that correct?
On 9.9?
Or was it 9.9?
9.9.
No.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a suggestion on 9.8, but I don't know if you care that much to pull it out.
Well, the question is,
Contract term.
do you care that much? If you do, pull it.
All right, we'll pull it. It's short.
Which one?
9.8.
Okay.
So you're
And we're also pulling,
9.8,
hold on
9.9.
a second. So we're
9.8 and 9.9.
9.8, 9.9. With 9.8 and 9.9 removed, are there any others that anybody wants to remove? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Any discussion? Trustee Nielsen?
No, I was seconding if it wasn't.
Okay. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody against? Hearing none, the motion passes. So now we will move to 9.8 for discussion. Nine point eight is the agreement for special services with the law firm Atkinson.
No,
And-
9.8 is,
No, I'm sorry. Reading 9.9. 9.8 is at the very bottom of your agreement for legal services with Griffin and Thornborough. And then, just to continue, 9.9 will be the agreement for special services with the other law firm, Atkinson, Andelson, Loya, Rude, and Romo. So let's stick with 9.8 for the moment, and ask if there are comments, discussion. I guess Trustee Croninger could start us off.
it's a simple suggestion relating to Exhibit A. It is pretty common practice in many legal agreements that you basically don't separately cost the telephone calls, the postage, the photocopying, that sort of thing. It's wrapped into the hourly rate. It simplifies the bill, and
Can I say that's
it's a
not,
good idea.
that wasn't my
And
experience.
so the question is, my suggestion is that we ask them to forgo that, and I think they probably would.
to,
Forgo those small expenses, basically, because particularly in dealing with government agencies and audit questions, you just, it's a nightmare. I've had that, we represented CalPERS,
well,
and
I just add, we had a different experience. We always, at my law firm, we always identified the copying costs, the telephone costs, the mileage costs. We always set that out, and we billed those items separately. Those were on every bill we ever sent. We had costs in addition to the hourly fee.
right, but it's typical to have as well the ability for government contracts to be audited. And where we ran into it initially was with CalPERS, where they said, you know, if you're saying it's a cost, how do you know it costs 20 cents a page to copy? And so I asked the law firm, and they said, I have no idea. So we said, forget it.
Well, our clients were always willing and often told us if they thought the costs were not correct, and we would negotiate and make adjustments. But in any event,
Anyway,
is there
it's a
any-
minor suggestion on my part. I just think it simplifies a bill and gets rid of potential audit questions.
Trustee
I'm
Parker?
just going to ask if this is the format that the Griffith and Thornburg team has always brought forward.
This is typical, I think, of what they've sent before. I don't think that's new. Pretty
No,
sure
I don't
not.
think it's probably
Yeah.
new either. We haven't seen it for a while, and I know you're bringing these to us. Yeah.
So the issue is whether we would ask to remove that from the contract or not. Is that, do I state that
Probably
correct?
save more money if you asked them to reduce the hourly fee.
Yeah, yeah. No doubt about it.
I mean, I couldn't help myself, I'm sorry.
No doubt.
Hey, you're doing your job,
Good
Dr.
point, though.
Benjamin.
Good point. They'll just raise the hourly fee. They
Yeah.
No, they don't get to raise the hourly
Oh.
fee. It's wrapped in.
Any other comments on this
On that
item?
one, no. That one is pretty simple.
What, do you have a motion you wish to make regarding item?
Motion to approve it without those additional costs.
Is there any, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
Well, yeah, I mean, I
Clean
don't
it
care
up.
if this comes back. I would just imagine that we could only approve it provisionally, given that Griffith and Thornburg need to.
Sure. We would only approve it from our side. They would have to agree, correct? Any other comments?
I'll just say that when we pay our lawyer at Community Services District, we also pay the costs and expenses separately, so I don't know if they'd agree to it
Yeah.
necessarily.
Okay, with that, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
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 All those against? No?
Abstentions?
Abstain?
I don't feel I have enough information to make a judgment here, one way or the other.
Okay, well, the motion passes. So the contract will be presented to them with that deletion. And next one is 9.9. And Trustee Croninger, could you tell us your concerns with that one?
Yeah, this one raises the process question as well as the content question. I'm concerned about the process because I did not know that the college had retained these folks as lawyers, and Helen told me that we already had in the past. This was an extension. And I asked Dr. Beebe if he knew that, and he said no, he had no idea that we had retained them. So we've got a process issue here in terms of where contracts originate and how they are entered. And I know Dr. Benjamin is trying to deal with that and work with that, and I support that because we really need to clarify some of those issues. So we don't have contracts we don't know about floating around. And in this case, I'm also concerned about the substance because in terms of a contract that I'm familiar with between lawyers and clients, it's a lot more like the Griffith Thornburg, and there are a number of provisions here that would be rejected by a typical corporate entity. They would not make it into a contract with the lawyers, and they would not be happy to even be asked. So those include the contract provides for binding arbitration if we have a dispute with them. Normally, that is not something you want to agree to. And particularly with a law firm, because the law firm is more advantaged than the college is in that situation. There is a provision for basically double billing the college and another client during travel time. That has not a common practice in my experience. In fact, what is common right now is that clients are saying, we're not going to pay you for travel at all, unless perhaps it's more than 6 hours for you to do that traveling. And particularly with a law firm that is based in LA, these are significant expenses for us. So what they're saying in the contract is, I can be traveling to your place to meet with you. I will charge you, client SBCC, for that travel time, and I will bill another client if I am thinking hard about their case while I'm traveling, or if you're on an airplane writing something or whatever. But basically, that's a double billing thing, and it is frowned upon for sure, in my experience. They also have a 5% markup.
Can I ask a question there? So what you're saying is that they'd be susceptible to double billing. I mean, this contract doesn't say anything about allowing double
It says
billing.
we're permitting them to double bill.
Well, we're permitting them to charge us for their travel time, and what you're saying is that they could use that time to do something else as they're
No, we're
traveling.
permitting them to bill another client for the same time that they're
Where
billing
does it
us.
say that? What?
In the contract.
But can you tell me what paragraph?
Make me
Section
look for it, huh?
3B, under terms and conditions.
Yeah, Kate's right, 3B.
Oh.
May charge the full hourly rate to more than one client for services provided concurrently during the same time period, for example, in the course of traveling to the district or while providing legal services to the district. The law firm may provide billable services to other clients.
In the
We're
way I
saying
read
that's
that,
okay.
maybe it needs more clarification. I read that as they wouldn't be double billing, but they would not be charging. If they're traveling an hour and they spend 30 minutes on the phone with another client, they would charge 30 minutes to the other client, and then the remaining
Yeah.
30 minutes. Well, I'm
Yeah.
telling you, that's the way I saw it.
Okay.
And And maybe this,
Provided concurrently means at the same
well,
time.
that's subject to ambiguity. I get your point. I think it's not a well-written paragraph, and
think-
perhaps needs to be cleaned up.
Well, I would say that the standard is you don't bill for time, for travel time at all, for us, especially, as I said, when you're talking about somebody who's coming from LA. That's on them. It's free for us unless you're talking about, it takes a day to get across country or something like that. That's pretty standard right now.
Wasn't standard in my firm. If we had to drive from LA to Santa Barbara, believe me, we would have charged for that time, because if they've assigned us to a case in Santa Barbara and we're in LA, we're in a car driving, we can't do other work. Well, that was in the days when you didn't have telephones, but theoretically, you don't do any other work.
I love that you guys are both lawyers. Can we table this? Because I appreciate that in the best interest of the college, that this, you're looking at this. And they're scheduled to perform services, it's effective July 1st. Is this going to delay some service that needs to happen?
I'm wondering if in the same way you just approved the one for
Griffith and Thornburg?
Griffin conditionally, you could do the same here, because we have these people doing stuff for us right now that we need to pay them for, and ask them about these particular clauses. And in the same way we're asking Griffin and Thornburg, we can ask them if they would clarify these things or remove these things that are objectionable to the board, or if they're objectionable to you.
Trustee,
We could do that. There's more of them, and I'm just saying, it's a more
just point
complicated.
out.
Yep.
Yeah. There's the 5% markup on consultants, which we never did. And I have I've checked this with people who are still practicing. I said, is it still like I remember it? They said yes. There is a
I'd agree with that one. I've never heard of
failure.
that.
Yeah.
Which one is that?
5% markup on consultants. In
It's
other
like-
words, when they hire a
It's
consultant.
provisions, it's toward the end of paragraph C. And I agree with Trustee Croninger on that one. I've never heard of that before.
And then there's a provision about failure to disagree with the bill for 30 days is deemed complete approval of the services and the amounts. Basically, at that point, you're precluded from complaining about that. And that's, frankly, a really short time frame for our institution. I don't think we should be precluded from some later disagreement.
Which number is that one, Marcia? The
What-
one you're referencing now, which three, is it three, which?
3D.
D is in David?
E.
Is D, the end
Well,
of
D
D.
has some short turnaround for payment, but E is the one that says basically it's deemed to agree that the monthly billing statement accurately reflects what was performed and the proper charge. So at that point, you're stuck.
Okay. Well,
B, C, D, and E with those exceptions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is just like the meat of their billing.
Trustee Haslam.
I'm just curious, why are we hiring this law firm? What will happen if we say no?
I don't think anything happened. They're in the middle of doing some stuff for us right now. I personally favor having two options when we get behind like we are now on some things. We paid this firm under $20,000 last year, if my review is correct. So we're not expecting to pay them a huge amount of money, but it's good to have that option, and they do training for us as well.
Okay. So your recommendation is to continue with the
Especially
modification?
since we have them working on some things right now.
Right, okay. And you feel pretty secure about being able to negotiate a modification of the contract along lines that have been discussed here?
I will make that attempt to do that, because they are working, as I said, for us right now in some cases.
Okay.
Yeah. And we can come back next month to let you know how it turns out with both of them, actually.
I don't think any of the items that Trustee Croninger brought up are unreasonable to discuss with them, so I would expect them to work with us.
Well, I think the larger question for me is having to do with the law firm that would come forward with a contract that has so many objections. Maybe they're assuming that nobody ever reads, like me. I didn't read this.
You know, you're fortunate to have lawyers on the board, and everybody doesn't have that. But I do want to point out that I think they would work with us on that. And they are used by quite a few community colleges in the state of California.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the firm. Okay.
And K-12 just
That's the
does.
reason, frankly, why I brought up process first, because I think that these are contracts that the people, whoever did it, whoever started that process, didn't really know what was reasonable or expected in the industry. And so we wound up with something that was not to our benefit.
Yeah, and I don't have any history on it at all, but they were legitimately working for the district.
So is do we have a motion to table, or do we need a motion to?
Yeah, I
put it-
think I would bring this one back.
Table it?
Yeah, table it, bring it back,
Okay.
if we can.
I'm wondering if we can continue to have them work for us if you do. The contract
Is going to end next
expires
Wednesday.
June 30, and I don't want us to fall into a position as a district where we have people working for us without a
Is there
contract.
is there an existing contract?
There is an existing contract, and this was the renewal of that.
It seems like we could just continue that contract until we get this one approved. I don't think
You
there's...
could go for 11 days into July, basically.
Or-
We have another meeting then.
Yeah.
This contract also says the duration means it'll go month to month after it expires. for
Sure,
This
that-
one, so maybe the other one.
That's the usual,
Closer
yeah.
at the other one.
That's the usual.
That's a good point. The other one, if this is a continuation,
Yeah.
then it already has a month to month.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, I just want to be sure.
Trustee Parker?
That makes me feel better, but because it just seems like so convoluted to try to pull certain items from this when it's this complex that we're talking about. But just speaking on process, it would have been so helpful to, I don't know how long ago, Trustee Croninger, you realized that there were these issues, but for all of us, if we could talk to Dr. Benjamin a couple of days ahead of time, because it could have been that this would have been fixed and dealt with tonight. And so sometimes I know that questions come up on the day, but if we as a board can make an attempt to let staff know ahead of time so that we can take care of business here and now, that would be great.
Yeah, I didn't, Trustee Croninger mentioned it to me, but not with all this detail, and that's a good suggestion. That's one of my suggestions about the way we communicate with each other, because we end up spending a lot of time this way. Could have been resolved. I take responsibility for that.
Well, I do too. I mean, you're right. Some of this comes up when you go back through it more carefully, and some of it comes up sooner.
Okay, I move to approve item 9.9. I mean, to table item 9.9.
Second.
Or second. All those in favor? Aye. Anybody against? Hearing none, it passes. Okay, I think let me catch up here. We're now on move to item 10. 10.1, which is establishing the appropriation limit for 2019-2020, and this is something that we are required to, as I understand it, required to do every year. And Dr. Benjamin could just tell us briefly what this involves.
Is this a Lindsay? Yeah, this is a state.
Is the GAN
Or
limit?
James,
Yeah, they can.
or I could just read it.
As you can see, that's okay. As you can see in the first paragraph, it's referred to as a GAN limit, and it's for the state, and all districts have to do this annually for appropriations of tax proceeds for all the cities in the state that fund this. So it's a routine. We have to do this once a year.
This is roll call.
Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve resolution number 15, establishing the appropriations limit for 2019-20.
Do we have a second? Any discussion?
No, just that this is the item that comes in our audit every year, and then the auditor will go into detail about where we are, and so, when it comes back to us.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Resolution.
Oh, it's a
Okay.
All resolutions.
Student trustee Igbechi?
Aye.
Trustee Abu?
Aye.
Trustee Garrett?
Aye.
Trustee Parker?
Aye.
Trustee Nielsen?
Aye.
Trustee Haslam?
Aye.
Trustee Miller?
Aye.
Trustee Croninger?
Aye.
Okay, we'll move on to item 10.2, Child Development Agreement.
This
Yeah.
is another item that we have to approve annually. We get funds from the California Department of Education to subsidize our early learning center. And we're asking your approval on this one as well.
I move to approve item 10.2, Resolution Child Development Agreement.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay.
They're all
Roll call.
resolutions here.
Go for it.
Student trustee Igbechi?
Aye.
Trustee Parker?
Aye.
Trustee Abu?
Aye.
Trustee Garrett?
Aye.
Trustee Croninger?
Aye.
Trustee Nielsen?
Aye.
Trustee Haslam?
Aye.
Trustee Miller?
Aye. Okay. Now move on to item 10.3, resolution authorizing Allen Hancock Community College District to offer a fire science program for 2019-2020.
I move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
No.
Go for it.
Aye.
Sorry. Every resolution requires this.
Trustee Croninger?
Aye.
Trustee Abu?
Aye.
Trustee Miller?
Aye.
Trustee Parker?
Aye.
Trustee Garrett?
Aye.
Trustee Nielsen?
Aye.
Trustee Haslam?
Aye.
Okay. Item 10.4, resolution pursuant to Government Code Section 53094 for zoning, County of Santa Barbara. And I believe we have Sita Torres here.
Hello, good
to-
afternoon. I
And
was
you-
asked to provide some brief detail.
And you're also going to help us with
10.5?
10.5 as well.
Right,
Okay.
essentially the same detail that I was asked to add, just briefly regarding the resolution. As I referenced in the write-up I prepared for the board agenda, the board is authorized by a vote of 2/3 of its members to render county and local city zoning ordinances inapplicable to its facilities modernization, maintenance, and improvement projects for classroom facilities as opposed to non-classroom facilities. Non-classroom facilities are construed extremely narrowly, typically with classroom facilities being construed as any facility directly used for or related to student education. Historically, the legislature enacted 53094 and its associated statutes due to a recognition that school construction, school facilities construction with regard to classroom buildings specifically is almost entirely occupied by the state, which in this case Division of the State Architect. So there was this recognition that there needed to be a way to approach school construction without there being conflicting ordinances and regulations and confusion with regard to this issue. It's not entirely without restriction, this ability to exempt school construction from these local and county zoning ordinances. The restrictions are, for example, it needs to be 2/3 member of the, a vote of 2/3 of the board's members. And additionally, there are, for example, under Government Code Section 53097, certain grading and drainage construction projects, road projects that are on-site, on-campus sites that have an associated effect on off-site facilities will be subject to cooperation and regulation, working conversations with county, city, depending on what those specific regulations are pertaining to the drainage or grading issues. As I reviewed the resolutions before the meeting, I have worked with college staff in preparing the resolutions. This is both for the city and the county, 10.4 and 10.5. There's a list of campus sites, and there is one, number 5, the Cosmetology Academy. I thought about that one a little bit more because certain leases, I know the college leases that space, certain leases obviously will, depending on how long the term of that lease is, will provide some ownership, entitlement rights to the the lessee. However, in this instance, I think that the Cosmetology Academy doesn't necessarily fit into that list as our campus sites in which we have control over, because it's a private facility that we're leasing for the Cosmetology Academy, is my understanding. And so it wouldn't necessarily be applicable, the exemption that we're seeking to adopt, it wouldn't necessarily be applicable to that particular site. And so with, depending on any questions, I would recommend adoption of the resolutions as amended by striking that number 5 from the resolutions themselves.
So the foundation would just continue to do their normal process as they've been doing to do any renovations, get it up to whatever it needs to be so it can be functioning for the students, as they have?
Correct.
Or as they did prior to us moving in there?
Correct.
Any other questions? Trustee Parker?
Following up on that, I would like to know more at some point about the lease that we have with the Education Foundation on that, since I am unfamiliar with it. And just also to say that I'm surprised that this is coming up now, because I would have thought this would have been done decades ago.
Well, this issue came up, as I mentioned in the write-up, with the related matter, which was that the college received the notice of violation from the county with regard to the Wake Campus portables. And in dealing with that particular issue, we realized, at least with Griffith and Thornburg's internal records, there was no record of the college having enacted such a resolution, which was also surprising to us because, the other districts that we work with have done that in the past.
Yeah, Trustee Croninger.
You mentioned the notice of violation that the portables haven't yet been certified by DSA, and I know we went through a long process of catch-up on some of those things, and I thought we were caught up, so apparently not. Do you know the status on these?
I don't, but we have committed to working with Rob Morales and Lindsay Moss to try and make sure, and KBZ is the architect that I think is affiliated in the conversation. And so I'm hoping to move forward and planning to help rectify those pending DSA issues.
Trustee Nielsen.
To follow up on Marcia Croninger's point about the DSA, we had...
Microphone.
Oh, it's on. She just wants to go closer to okay. Regarding the DSA, we had a few years back a long list that we played catch up on, and what Marcia said, and so I'm glad that I'm sorry to see that we're having to revisit it because things were missed. But we have new people in charge, so hopefully there's some records of what they did or didn't do, so that we don't have to do everything over again just because something wasn't filed. I am curious, why did the county go to the trouble of doing this with those portables at the Wake Center? Do you happen to know the idea of why?
It seemed like the background seemed to be that somehow maybe in that catch-up process, or maybe it was missed in the catch-up process that DSA and SVCC were working on, and it came to the attention of county through someone at DSA who said, they needed assistance, I guess, with rectifying this issue. And so when we spoke with Mr. Schmuckel from county, he just mentioned that, his really, I guess, bone in the game or a foot in the game was just that he was trying to assist the communication loop in terms of getting DSA to, basically to communicate with DSA what the actual problem was. And what I could tell from background information and emails that I had, it seemed to be very specifically, the problem seemed to be very specifically tied to fire safety compliance issues. And so we're just trying to really go back and get to the bottom of that at this point.
Okay. I had some questions about, are the portables even under DSA because they're like pre-built and set down already, so I didn't know that maybe that's why, but all of a sudden they are. And it's disheartening to go through all that work and pay for everything and then have to do it over again. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank
your
you.
expertise. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments, Trustee Haslam?
I'm trying to understand the consequence of this proposal. What is the consequence of removing the Cosmetology Academy from this list?
There is no consequence. My recommendation to remove it is that the authority for the college to exempt the facilities projects on its campus sites from regulation is based on essentially the fact that we own the properties, and so it's a school district property, that's a college property. And so because we lease the site at the Cosmetology Academy rather than actually own the underlying land and building, I didn't feel, or excuse me, not I don't feel, but the resolution isn't necessarily intended to encompass property, a campus site, construction on a facility that we don't own.
Yeah, but what's the consequence?
The consequence is that if there
will
was
this impose additional restrictions on?
I guess if there was exactly. So in other words, the county and local zoning ordinances, if there was additional construction on that site, they would be applicable to the additional construction at that site, or improvements in facilities, consequences would arise from that.
The county would retain its zoning authority over that property.
Correct. City and county zoning authority over that property.
So we're essentially telling the county hands off on the other
Yeah.
properties that we own because we're the state.
Right.
We don't own.
But we don't own the academy, so we can't really do that.
Well, we can do some things, because as I understand it, it's basically a long-term lease. We intend to have this for a long time, so we have some rights. So then to me, it sounds like it's a gray area.
Sounds to me like the law probably would not necessarily allow a lease to be part of the law that allows us to be exempt from zoning authority.
Interesting.
I assume it doesn't encompass leases.
Right, and
Yeah.
there is case authority involving college lease of its parking lot for a swap meet, and that was obviously a very specific situation. However, there is authority indicating that a lease wouldn't necessarily be encompassed, lease-type ownership of property wouldn't necessarily be encompassed in the college's authority to exempt itself from county and local zoning ordinances. So that is exactly a gray area, not necessarily any legislation or case authority specifically on point, but a gray area that I thought recommended, and it would be advisable to remove the leased property from the resolution.
Do you see any kind of conflict here between, like, does the state have anything to say about their regulations and what might be in contrast to the cities or the county's regulations? Do you see any contrast there, or should it really, is it something we should be concerned about?
In terms of the contradiction, that is what the legislative scheme was intended to avoid, obviously, is that conflict and contradiction between DSA authority and regulations and then local, county, and city zoning ordinances. So there is that potential problem that arises when the school construction isn't exempt from such restrictions. So, given that leased property is not necessarily going to be part of this resolution, and under our authority to exempt ourselves from that, the college from that regulation, there can, I guess, potentially be those problems arising in terms of the contradictory regulations. That will have to be worked out.
Well, we have a very good, long-standing relationship with the county and the city, and so hopefully, any issues that come up can be, talked about and agreed upon.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Hold on just a moment. And is there a motion to adopt Resolution 10.4?
You want to do both of them together?
Well,
No.
I don't know if we can. Can we do that?
We have before.
No, they're separate resolutions.
Okay, well, do we hear, okay, do we hear a motion to,
Yes.
hear a motion to adopt 10.4 and 10.5 with the deletion of the,
The Cosmetology Academy.
trying to find my, deletion of the Cosmetology Academy, item number 5 on, it's actually 1, and then item 5, under item 1 in 10.5. With that, is there a motion to adopt both of those with that change?
Excuse me, I would recommend, I'm sorry, I would recommend them voting on them separately.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
okay, well, let's do 10.4 then. Is there a motion to adopt?
I move adoption of Resolution 18.
As
How
amended.
about 10.4?
That's
It's-
the item number. The resolution
Oh,
number
I
is
see.
18.
Oh, okay. So corrected. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, I guess we have a roll call vote.
Student trustee Igbechi?
Aye.
Trustee Croninger?
Aye.
Trustee
Flirting
Abud?
finally occurs.
Aye.
Trustee Miller?
Aye.
Trustee Parker?
Aye.
Trustee Gallardo?
Aye.
Trustee Nielsen?
Aye.
Trustee Haslam?
Aye.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the resolution listed under item 10.5?
Should we hear from council first?
She took both of them.
It's the same.
It's this is the one where we would delete the academy from
Right.
item 5. That's the change that you suggest?
In both the resolution, 10.4, excuse me, in both that resolution and then the resolution under 10.5, the Cosmetology Academy will be deleted from the resolution.
Okay, so,
The 10.4 has to do with exemption from county authority, and the 10.5 has to do with exemption from city authority.
okay, so is there a motion to approve?
I so move.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Nope, go to resolution, roll call. Caught
Trustee
myself.
Igbechi?
Aye.
Trustee Nielsen?
Aye.
Trustee Haslam?
Aye.
Trustee Parker?
Aye.
Trustee Croninger?
Aye.
Trustee Abud?
Aye.
Trustee Miller?
Aye.
Trustee Gallardo?
Aye. Are you still using your list? You're like switching it up?
I'm switching it up.
I know.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 10.6, approval of the 2019-20 tentative budget, an item that we have seen on a few occasions, most recently on June 14th, and James is going to address us.
All right. Yes, so we have definitely seen this on a number of occasions, and let's see here. It's on. So we have seen this on a number of occasions, both in pieces, and then we did see it in full at the board retreat on the 14th. So I am going to go through it one more time just to make sure that everybody's on board. I do want to remind everybody this is the tentative budget. We are going to continue working on this throughout the summer. So this isn't by no means final, but this is where we're at right now. So there's been no changes in this since we did look at it on the 14th. This is the same exact, these are the same exact numbers. That does not mean that we stopped working on it between now and then. It's just that we need to kind of bring the same numbers a couple times for tentative adoption. So we have continued working on this. We have actually identified a number of cuts. I'll get to some of that as we go through the presentation, but just to let you know, we are still continuing to work on this.
But otherwise, this is exactly the same as
This presentation and what we're asking you to approve as our tentative budget is exactly the same as what we looked at on the 14th. So there's no changes.
So would it be appropriate to move adoption of the tentative budget?
Sure.
If so, I would like to move adoption, since we have already seen this document a number of times.
Is there a second?
I'll second it to get it out there. That's very appropriate, but then, of course, I look forward to your presentation, especially since the public has not seen that yet.
Okay.
Okay.
Carry on. All right. So Tentative budget, again, we'll start with the assumptions. I'm going to hit on some things that are different than what they've been prior to our meeting on the 14th. So state revenue, we do continue to have that based on primarily on FTES. Obviously, with the new funding formula, that has changed to be a little bit less important, but that is our number one assumption, is based on FTES. We do continue to project that we are going to decline 1% next year. That hasn't changed. I'm just going to point that out. So one change we have made between last month, this time, and now is that the state budget does include a 3.26% COLA. We had previously left that out of our revenue projections. That has been added into our revenue projections. So this is our best revenue projection based on the information that was available at the time we put these numbers together. So you'll note at the bottom here, our total computational revenue, which is that state number that we look at, is based on the May 3rd simulator on the funding formula. That funding formula has changed since that time. So there's a couple changes. I did want to highlight them real quick, just on a high level. So the State Budget Act is capping our student success percentage at 10%. So instead of that ever going up to 20%, which was the original intent of the student-centered funding formula, that's now going to stay at 10%. The transfers, they're changing the way they're counting them. It's very vague language on that, so we're waiting to hear more information on how they're going to be counting that. They're going to go to a 3-year rolling average for the success metrics. They did that on our FTES, which smooths out any declines and also slows down any increases or any growth. But they're going to do that same 3-year rolling average with the student success metrics. Again, that's one that we don't know how that's going to impact us yet. We're still waiting for the language on how they're going to implement that and information from the Chancellor's office. But that is a change. And then they're also implementing an unduplicated head count on the success metrics, where previously we had been able to count every award that students were receiving. They're now going to make it so that a single student can only be counted in any one award category. And it's the highest funded award is what they'll count. So those are all changes to that funding formula since then, but those are not built into these numbers.
Just to be sure I'm understanding, you're saying these are changes, but they're not yet in this tentative budget?
Correct. I just want to make everybody aware, those are changes. They're not in this budget. They will be in the adopted budget when we get there. Right now, we do not have anywhere near enough information from the state in order to calculate these revenues.
Could we roughly calculate the impact of the highest individual?
Not at this point.
We don't know what that number is for us?
No, because in addition to us needing to do a significant amount of programming on our side to kind of calculate that in order to call out which students got which awards, we'd have to do a bunch of programming in our research data. We also don't know what the funding rates are going to be. So we really don't know.
Yeah, I'm just thinking we should, I guess, be able to call out which of our students are affected by that count, basically. You know, how many students got 3 certificates, but only 1 will count, or something like that.
We'll be able to, we just aren't right now.
Okay.
So.
And that's part of what will happen. You approved a contract tonight with Partnership West, and they're going to help us with obtaining those figures.
So, and like I said, until we know all the information from the state, it's way too premature for us to make any estimates on what that's going to do. So,
What will be their mechanism for telling us the answer to these questions? A letter, a regulation,
I
trailer bill?
don't know for sure, but what I would assume was we'll be able to get the trailer bills that come through the legislature once we have all those and those are finalized. Then we can look at that language. The Chancellor's office normally will break that down into something. And what they've been doing since this new formula came in is they're contracting with FCMAT to create simulators that go through and do these calculations, because the calculations are extremely complicated and very layered. And so I'm assuming that we will get a simulator with all of this data implemented, as well as what the chancellor's office sees is all of our data for things like the 3-year rolling average, et cetera, and then we'll be able to look at our data and validate all of that. Okay, so there's no changes on this page. These are just our assumptions on all of these success metrics. As I just said, a lot of this is changing based on the changes in the funding formula. So as we get more information, these assumptions will change over the summer, but for now, there's no changes on this. So our ongoing state revenue, again, no changes anywhere in here. A lot of this is fairly straightforward on that stuff. State revenue, our deficit factor, we do not have a deficit factor budgeted into next year. They are doing what they call constraining our growth on in our 18-19, our current fiscal year, which has the same effect as a deficit factor on us. So we don't have it in the budget for next year. It is possible. It's definitely an unknown. We never typically budget a deficit factor. As we get more information from the state, again, this is something we could reconsider, but right now we don't have anything budgeted for a deficit factor for next year. Our local revenue, again, we're projecting a 1% decline in FTES, so our enrollment fees will go down. That's part of that total computational revenue. We do anticipate an increase in our international tuition, but our non-resident tuition, we're expecting that to continue to decline. So our FTES, this is just the numbers around kind of what I've talked about. Expenditure assumptions. The first one is probably one of the bigger ones. Our permanent staff salaries are budgeted based on our current contracts. Negotiations are currently still open, so anything that comes from those negotiations would have an impact on this budget, but they're not included right now. So we do anticipate continuing our workforce reduction through attrition program, the RAP program that we've talked about. That is one way we generate generally significant one-time savings. Those are, as we reevaluate positions to whether or not we're going to replace them, those positions are held before we would refill them. That creates a gap in the time of those positions being filled, and we generally would see some sort of savings. We did actually build in some of that savings into this budget, so that is included right now. Previous versions of the budget had a 4% increase in hourly wages, or not in hourly wages, but in our hourly budgets, due to the fact that the minimum wage will be increasing by $1 in January. Looking at the deficit, we didn't feel we could do that, so we are holding our hourly salaries. We're going to hold the budgets for those flat for next year. So those were the major changes. So on this page, you'll note the CalPERS and the CalSTRS rates. Those rates, based on the state budget, are likely going to change. We don't have the updated rates yet. The governor's proposal had originally put all of the money that he wants to contribute to STRS, and that was holding down our STRS rate. The legislature came back and said, actually, hold on, let's put some of that money to PERS too. And so we're anticipating that our PERS rate will go a little bit lower, but until we get a number from PERS, we don't know what that's going to be. So and that will also mean that that STRS rate will likely go back up just a little bit. So we'll see what those numbers are, and we'll recalculate our budget appropriately once we get those numbers. All right, so our other assumptions, Budget Resource and Allocation Committee goes through, that committee goes through all of the departmental budgets every year, the fairly fine-tooth comb, and asks all the people that are submitting the budgets to kind of explain what they're asking for and everything. And it is an opportunity for people to bring requests, things that they think that they need for increases. We did receive significant increases Originally, that was built into the version we looked at a month ago. It has been pulled out. Now, we've been able to pull out from $925,000 in requested increases. We were able to drop that down to $376,000 in areas that we really had to increase either contractually or there were real needs. So that committee really went back through everything. After going through it once, we went back through everything again and pulled a lot out. As I mentioned earlier, we do continue to look at this budget. We are identifying additional cuts. We've identified somewhere in the neighborhood of 800,000-ish to $1 million. So we're really working on this budget continuously right now. So our transfer assumptions, these are relatively similar to what they have been. The major changes are we did add a transfer of $250,000 to the construction fund in order to start essentially a savings account for 8 years from now when we do anticipate needing to replace the turf again. And then also the transfer from food to food services, we did originally have that in at $150,000. As we get closer to the end of the year and looking at results, I'm getting closer. I think we're going to need to transfer $200,000 over there, so I changed that assumption. All right, so.
Jane, sorry, to the construction fund, I just remembered the seismic improvements to the campus center, that's going to be paid out of the 10.8
Yes.
set aside? So
Yes,
it doesn't
and
impact?
and that is in the budget. So. All right, so all those assumptions, and these are the numbers that we come to. So again, since last time, you'll see that our tentative budget, the revenues have increased. That's primarily due to adding the rate increases from the COLA in there. You'll also notice that 1819, as we got more information from the Chancellor's office, we went ahead and built in the fact that they're going to constrain our revenue in 1819 into that estimated actual number. So that does make our 1819 numbers look a little worse. So I'm just pointing that piece out. The $97.8 million, that's lower than we had anticipated, but that is based on that, the Chancellor's office constraining our revenue. So bottom line, once we get there after transfers, you're looking at, we're anticipating about a $2.3 million deficit in the current fiscal year, and currently a $4.9 million deficit in next fiscal year. As I said, we do continue to work on that. We know that is a significant deficit, and we are continuing to work on ways to reduce that deficit. So this is just a little bit of detail on how those revenues are broken out. This slide here I do think is one of the more interesting slides. It does kind of show us kind of our main allocations. That state allocation, that's what we get from the funding formula, that very first, that top line, the total computational revenue. That's what the funding formula produces. Other state revenue, that's primarily reimbursements for mandated expenses and then lottery, or the revenue from lottery proceeds. And then our other categories down below. So, yeah, Jonathan.
Just a quick clarification on the 82. So the 82, you minus out the 31 in property taxes, and then that's how you get what the state owes us, or in a way. Like, I know that's not exact, but
essentially,
that's how much
you
we
take
should
the
have,
82,
yeah.
you minus out what we're going to get in property taxes, which I believe is somewhere in the 32 million. I can't remember exactly. And then you also take out our enrollment fees.
Okay.
So the $46 per unit that students pay to come here, that stays with us, but it's rolled into that total computational revenue.
Right.
So
But it doesn't include the international and non-resident
It does not,
extra
no.
fees. So those are outside of that.
Yes.
But do they pay like an in-state part and out-of-state part like at CSU and UC, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
They
So
pay the out-of-state tuition plus the $46 per unit.
So their 46 part is part of the 82, and then the other part is that 4 million and 9 million, or 4.8 and 9.4.
Believe the entire amount stays with us.
I know it's probably not a huge,
So-
no, thank you. And
But
thank
yeah.
you for including this, because I know I had asked in the past to have that breakdown, and I think it's awesome, so appreciate it.
All right, so that brings us to our fund balances. So you see that really this column right here kind of gives us a good idea where we're going to end up in relation to our board minimum policy. So we are staying with this budget above the board minimum policy. It's right down to about $301,000 above, but we do stay above the board minimum policy with this budget. So this is just the graphical representation with both the unrestricted general fund, which is that blue line, as well as our construction fund and our equipment funds. So, questions on those? All right. So really quick, our construction fund, I do want to point out that we have added in our construction fund a $2 million using our construction fund reserves to replace our turf at the La Playa Stadium, as well as $500,000 for classroom improvements. We do have some very old classrooms that are in need of repair. We can all hear the creaking seats. So those are the two major ones. The other thing is the amount for district maintenance needs has gone up. I think it was $570,000 in this current fiscal year is what we had originally set aside. We've increased that to $750,000. That's been in our assumptions from the beginning. Our buildings are very old and they are definitely in need of a lot of repair. So the $750,000 is, probably still a bare minimum estimate on what it's going to take just to keep the place running. If we continue to have water lines breaking and everything, it could potentially be more. So,
You may want to speak up into the microphone.
sorry, I was just saying that the $750,000 that is our baseline assumption of that's really what it's going to take just to keep the operations running, emergency repairs, roofs, et cetera. If we continue having water lines breaking and needing significant repairs, they could potentially be more. If it is, we'll be coming back with.
I'm noticing that when the news is bad, your voice trails.
Let me see if I can shrink a little
What did I miss?
But yes, no, our buildings are old. I
Yes.
think everyone's aware of that, and unfortunately, that does increase our maintenance costs.
Thank you.
All right, so the equipment fund, our expenditures, this is really our IT refresh is the bulk of it. Currently, we have nothing included for program review requests. We will be evaluating what's left over from previous year's program review requests, as well as any additional funding that might come in over the summer to see if there's anything that we're able to fund. But right now, there's nothing in the budget for that. We're just pretty much our standard $750,000 for IT refresh. All right. So does anybody have any questions on any of this so far, or are we pretty good? Do we want to go through all the other miscellaneous funds really quickly, or?
Not hearing any request.
No.
I
I'm
have
just
a bigger question, but
I'm just, my heart goes out to you. There's so many variables over which you have no control and about which you don't know, I think, when they're going to be determined, and still you're coming forward with something that is appropriately called a tentative budget.
Yes, this year, it's very similar to last year. We were hoping that this year we'd be in a different state than we were last year, where we came and they had just changed the whole funding formula. And unfortunately, here we are again this year with a tentative budget that we're saying is extremely tentative.
Yeah.
Until we get more information from the state, as well as continue our process at the college to continue to address the deficit, we don't know.
Do we have a guess as to when the state is going to come to closure on some of these questions?
I'm hopeful that it will be soon. I don't know. Last year, we got final revenue numbers or a final simulator from the state on the second week of August. And then we just rushed to implement from there. So we'll just continue working from the assumption that we do have a deficit. And I think that alone is just a fair enough baseline assumption.
What, I had asked before, what does the insurance fund pay for? Or what insurance is
So
insurance?
I did look into that. The insurance fund is money that's been set aside from years prior that has paid for various insurance needs. We do pay for hazmat disposal and stuff out of that currently every year. That's generally, that expense is about $40,000 a year that we have. That's really the only thing that gets paid for out of it right now. The fund just kind of earns a little interest and has been diminishing. But
What kind of disposal, you said?
hazmat?
Oh,
Hazardous materials?
Yeah. Sorry.
I figured, I was picturing the yellow, like, with the toxic.
So, looking at page 20 of your presentation, or the graph that corresponds to it, between the end of June 19, where we almost are, and the end of June 2020, we have used up 6 million, roughly, of our remaining undesignated reserves, taking us right down to the point where you're going below policy limits if you keep doing this. So my question really is, when we come forth with the more permanent budget, and as we move in that direction, what I would hope we can see is kind of a list of options, a list of ways that we might be able to cut more. I think we've been a bit rosy in our projections before, and then found ourselves a little bit further behind than we had hoped. So I'm moving toward the pessimistic side of that and saying, let's get as many ways and options that we can for cutting back on our expenditures to meet our revenues and to move forward. And I recognize that we don't want them to be a summer surprise. We want them to be something that can be discussed with all of our stakeholders. But having that list is the prerequisite to being able to discuss it.
And when you say you don't mean James, we, like if you keep doing this, like if we keep doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't mean James.
Yeah.
I mean, we all do it.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
I just wanted to say that was pointed out to us in the retreat. Is my mic on? No. I wish this had a light on it.
On now.
How do I know it's on?
It's up.
Okay, thank you. 87% of our budget is salaries and benefits. As I say to people, most of it goes in our pockets. And that doesn't leave very much. That's about $13 million. And James always corrects me and says, it's really 91.
About 91%.
91%. So that's 9% or $9 million. The most of it's in people. And what we're doing right now is going through that budget as closely as we can to avoid people. And there's just not much you can do, and especially at this moment. And so we are looking at all of those things. We will be talking to you again. We're coming back in August with some numbers on some of the things we talked to you about in the retreat around leasing the facility, international students, things like that. That's where revenue is. You have to approve those things. And so if we're avoiding reducing staff, then we have to look at external sources of revenue. As distasteful as that may be to you, that's the alternative to reducing staff. So we'll be back early August with those kinds of recommendations. The things we're doing now, they're coming out of that $9 million that we have left over.
Yeah.
And that's utilities, that's all the things you see up here to keep the place running every day. There's just not much we can cut from that.
Yeah,
So the choices are very limited.
I think we understand. I mean, you
I
are
just
not
want to
turning up.
reemphasize, since you
Yeah.
reemphasized that we need to do that, I'm reemphasizing that what our options are really limited.
Right. But that's, I think, one reason Peter brought up stipends earlier, because my recollection is we'd said that's roughly $1 million of general fund. So I
Absolutely.
think that goes on the list. I'm not saying I know the
Everything's,
answer.
yeah,
but-
everything's on the list,
And that's people, but it's not people in the same way.
except permanent employees, we're trying to keep intact.
So we have a motion. I don't recall if we had a second. We have a second. And the motion is to approve the tentative budget, to which we know there'll be changes, especially when Sacramento finally tells us what the heck's going on. So is there any more discussion? Is this a roll call vote? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you, James.
Good job.
Our next item is 11.1, Board of Trustee Goals, and this document before us comes out of our June 14th retreat, where we spent considerable time discussing our goals. And Dr. Benjamin, who was facilitating our discussion on that topic so well, she has taken that information and tried to synthesize it into a document that we could approve. So I guess I would start by asking whether there's any questions or comments.
May I make a comment about it,
Sure.
though? Because I didn't put it in the overview, that what I tried to do here was to take you gave me 5 areas, I think, that day, and I know you were interested in covering more because we had maybe 10 or 15 up there. And there was one on SEL, School of Extended Learning, and it was so close, it was so closely related to student learning and success that I incorporated that one into Board Goal, what is now Board Goal 3, which allowed the addition of one more goal. And the next highest vote getter there was student safety and well-being. I may not have captured that correctly, but this is stamped draft, and the purpose was for you to have an opportunity to look over these and have a discussion tonight, and if you came to agreement on it, these would be, you take action on them. If not, they can be further refined and brought back for approval next month. But we just tried to capture draft for your deliberation.
Trustee Aboud.
I just want to thank you for putting the goals in this format. It's in the SMART format, the specific, measurable, achievable, time-bound kind of thing, like how it's a goal and then objectives tied to the goal. I think we haven't had it like this before, so I really appreciate it. I actually went to a conference to learn how to do this, and it was in this exact format, and then the agenda got posted. I saw it like this, like, okay, great. So I think it captures our intention at the retreat really well, so thank you.
Trustee Gallardo.
Yeah, thank you. I echo that. You did a really good job with us for a lot of hours, so thank you. Board number 5, the student safety, that I see the narrative there with food insecurity, housing, and those are all good things. My thinking was around really campus safety, the reality of active shooters, cybersecurity, all of that stuff. And so I would like to see that goal refined, just because I think that the other stuff, the food insecurity, housing, that falls into the whole visions for success, guided pathways. So I'd like to remove all like that out and not so much make that goal about that, but more of the campus safety, well-being, and all of those elements.
So would you change the actual goal or change the items on the right?
The narrative,
the activity?
So the narrative was it says create a safe environment for students and support for issues.
Just stop it right there?
Yeah, and just stopping right there, yeah, and remove the transportation, food insecurity, housing, like all of that narrative, and just leave it so that it is a campus student safety, well-being, and superintendent president can then discharge those. Marcia, sorry.
Trustee
Yeah,
Croninger.
I would agree with that, because my recollection of our discussion, and it's too bad we don't have a audio on it, was that it was very focused on campus shooting issues and our concern that there are so many of these happening nationally, and that we did a lot of work around that historically a few years ago, and yet I'm not seeing it at the same level of preparation and readiness that we may have had. And so that was exactly what I had in mind in voting for that goal. I think there's I think it affects the subcategories as well. This is not just vulnerable students. All of our students are vulnerable on that point. And so, you know, the literal physical safety issue was central in my mind. And I do think there's room in that for mental health, because I think that is a factor in some of those events.
Trustee Nielsen.
Yeah, I see the issues in the, included in Board Goal 5, divided into like two categories.
Is your mic on?
Yes, my mic's on. I'll have to get closer to it,
Thank
I
you.
suppose. I see two categories of issues there. There are issues that we can and have to be paying attention to, especially nowadays, increased levels of attention, like the shooting incidents, that kind of thing. And I went to a conference on that too. And I know Dr. Beebe was very familiar with what went on up at Evergreen, and there have been other issues since. But being prepared for those things, even if we can't prevent them, and to do the things that we can do something about to prevent issues like the student mental health. But there are things here like food insecurity, which we can affect in a very limited way, and maybe we could do a better job on that. And then the student housing, things that we can affect and things that we can't. I think I'd rather see us focusing on, not to say those aren't real issues at all in any way, but I'd rather see us strongly focus on the things that we can actually have a real impact on. And that's why I would agree with the last two trustee statements about cutting the list short. It's not like to demean those other subjects or those categories or deny that there are issues there, but it's like let's concentrate on the things that we can affect and do something about. Just my comments. So I guess that makes at least three of us in agreement, maybe more.
Trustee Parker.
Sure. Yeah, I think that the focus there, I think it would be helpful still to have a blurb underneath it, since the other goals also have that. I had understood it to be a physical safety, and then also, you know, student health, both physical and mental health, as the priorities there, although there may be some way to kind of encompass the other points here, if that could be fine-tuned a little bit. And then I had a sort of a broader question, the activities list on the side, and I don't think we talked about specific activities in the board goals at the meeting, but I guess my question mark is, I mean, I can think of other activities that are not on this list.
Yeah, I was just thinking of appropriate role kinds of things for the board. You monitor, you establish policy, you do that. So you're welcome to add many other things. This is just kind of off the top of my head.
Yeah,
thinking.
for me in looking at it just on board goal 1, civil discourse and respect for others, I'm wondering if there's a way to tweak activity 1.1 slightly, because I think it would be really beneficial for our participatory government bodies that work with us, particularly the Academic Senate, to come forward in the coming year with some sort of statement on academic freedom of expression and civil discourse, and there are models out there, but I think that would really fit under Board Goal 1 is something for us to reflect on based on
That
what...
you would receive reports from college constituents?
So college constituents could develop a template. There are statements on academic freedom of expression and civil discourse that are out there that a lot of other universities have been creating that helps just set up a framework of discussion and sort of a ground level. So when things flare up, you have a statement to fall back on.
I think we have a comment coming.
To suggest that, if you don't mind. Exactly a year ago and a couple of months, the Academic Senate actually identified that exact goal, to create a AP, we have a board, a BP, but an administrative procedure around academic freedom. Excuse me. And then we went to a fall plenary of the State Academic Senate, and they told us they were working on their own, a new and updated, because I think the old statement is very dated. And so the Senate decided to wait until the State Academic Senate had drafted its, and they never actually did it. So we're going to revisit that when we resume.
Well, great. Well, that actually helps me clarify what I would probably put in 1.1, and that is participate in and promote college and community activities, and work with our constituent groups to develop board policies and administrative procedures that support civil discourse and respect for others, or something along, that just fit that in, the idea of putting in BPs, working on BPs and APs to fit in with Board Goal 1.
We did specifically want to address the issues of freedom of speech versus academic freedom.
Great.
They're not always the same thing.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other comments? Trustee Aboud?
I'd just say for Board Goal 5, I agree adding in mental health and campus shootings are important, but the other issues are critical to well-being. If a student's hungry or if a student's homeless, they're not well. And so I think we should I think our students would appreciate their board being focused on those issues. I don't see it as an if and or compare, one or the other. I think we can have shooting and mental health along with food and housing. It's not saying we're committing to doing anything. It's saying we're focused on these issues that are impacting thousands of students every single day.
I think we
I
are.
thought the food one was easy because we have a food
Food pantry.
So that was kind of done.
Yeah, I don't want anybody to walk away thinking that we're not committed to it. And when looking at this, I went in light with, I think what we left with last Friday or 2 Fridays, I don't remember now, that our next superintendent president is going to receive this, and just the time that is consumed by the president's office, and how you can narrow the scope of something to go deep versus just sprinkling a lot of things. And so it's not that, no, I don't think anybody on this board would disagree with even the recent HOPE survey that we all read and went through of food insecurity and housing, but it's really narrowing the scope that we do. I think this goal, at least it spoke to me because we have such a local context for it. I mean, something like housing insecurity, because of our natural disasters, that really has taken a different definition for us here in Santa Barbara, where every time, unfortunately, now we have a natural disaster, we literally have communities and families uprooted without housing. And so really for Santa Barbara, that the whole housing thing is a completely unique thing to us now, added to the complexity of the housing that California is going through. And so really, the putting it in light of safety of natural disasters or shootings or things like that was just to make it a goal for the superintendent president to address those things, health and safety within a facility. I know mold or water leakage, things like that, and not add that as to make that like a goal that this person's going to be charged with figuring out housing or something like that. Does that make sense? Not to diminish that we don't have housing, but housing for us is different now, and the mental health for our students from Carpinteria, Montecito, it doesn't matter what neighborhood you live in. Santa Barbara, what we experienced last year was something completely...
Although the housing issue is results from a number of different factors, and it's kind of ongoing, I kind of support keeping it in. Trustee Croninger?
Well, I would just point out that Helen was clear with us that we had 11 last year, 11 goals. It was too many. We needed to cut it back so we could focus, and we did a couple of combines, but housing was left there as a standalone goal, and it did not receive more than one vote. So I don't think, it's...
More than one vote at our retreat.
Yeah. So I think that it's fair to say that one is a standalone big problem, no doubt, but it didn't make the top 5, is what I'm saying when we voted on it, and that doesn't make it go away. That just makes it, we can't do everything all the time.
Did we vote specifically on the concern about shootings?
We were talking about that when we were talking about student safety. Specifically, we were bringing up the issues of physical well-being, basically. And that's something, as Craig pointed out, is within our control more than the larger socioeconomic issues. I mean, food insecurity, I agree with Helen. We have a program. We can go somewhere with that. And it's a partnership, as it should be, with other entities in our community. But
why do you say we have more control over school shootings? You mean in terms of what we can do to prepare for them?
Yes, in terms of what we can do to prepare for them. We can't control them happening, obviously, but we can try to prepare to best practices at all times.
Trustee Nielsen?
Yeah, we can do things for campus security, like write policies, give directions for preparedness. We can take specific actions, and we have a little bit of control about how we would respond to those emergencies and what we do to prevent them. Larger issues that are international, national, or statewide in scope that we have no funds with which to confront or to do anything about doesn't mean, because we don't have the financial ability to do anything about it, doesn't mean that we're unaware of those issues or that we think they're inconsequential or not important, but we need to be really careful how we spend the taxpayers' money, and to direct the manager of the institution, the new president that we hire, or even the existing president, to spend a whole lot of their time as a major important goal to work on student housing in relation to everything else that we laid out. It doesn't rattle around in my head the same way. It's different. It's a very real issue. So are some other things, very, very real issues, but we don't have them included here. And there are many things we pay attention to that are not on this list. That doesn't mean we forget about them or that we deny their existence. So I'm for leaving that off of this major list.
Okay.
If there wants to be an addendum, it should say something general, like there are many other issues, for example, this, and this, that the board is aware of and is in the process of addressing to the extent possible, and looking for avenues where it could be more effective. And we're collecting information on housing availability and information for student housing. We're communicating with the city and the county. We're looking at these issues. But we can actually do something about these other things. We could take some direct action that can affect them. And that's where we need to focus. It's taxpayers' money that we're directing to focus on things here.
Trustee Parker, do you have a comment?
Yes, I do. To me, it is, my concern about that, especially on the housing piece, is that if we don't have it as a goal now, especially when we have the Education Foundation working on a survey, that I really don't want to not follow through on whatever information we get from the survey, whether it says to do nothing or if there are even tweaks that we could do. It just makes sense for it to be tied in. My suggestion would be that we take Board Goal 5 offline and have a couple of us work on it before the next meeting to talk, because the focus of it, I really believe, should be student safety and physical health, mental health. But my concern here is it says support for issues when maybe it's more appropriate to say continue to work on issues impacting students like transportation, food, and housing insecurity to the extent possible. But I feel like this is maybe an offline discussion.
It sounds like adding a separate paragraph, which would be about the same thing of what I just recommended. I don't disagree with you at all. I just want the prime focus to be on things that we can affect, that we can do something about.
I think Trustee Parker's made a valid comment about the housing issue, but let me just say that we don't have to pass this tonight.
Right.
I mean, we could, but we don't have to because the deadline is at July that we have to adopt our, August, is it? So my thought is that Dr. Benjamin can take the comments we have tonight and continue to tweak, but maybe.
Trustee Parker's suggestion that board members work on it, I was just helping you out.
I think it looks great. I'm going to be very honest. Housing is not going to be a priority at this college that I'm going to support for next year. And so there's no going around it. It's just, one of my conversation with Jeff was very clear. We are wanting to learn, to understand about this issue. We just learned that beautiful building they leased for us downtown, it's now subject to all these regulations. So now the foundation is going to have to figure out how to fix that building for us based on every regulation. It's not going to be exempt from anything. We don't have the ability, the capacity, the resources to fund housing, to build housing, or any of that. Doesn't mean that we are oblivious to the need or that we're not going to continue to work with the local housing authority. They have a great mission for that, and we should continue to partner with them. That survey was strictly because we had a goal to learn about the implications for housing. Correct me, guys, if I'm wrong, but that was the understanding. In my conversation, in the email that I sent to Jeff, which you guys were CC'd on, was specifically that. The board wants to hear and to learn what direction you're taking the survey so we can provide direction and feedback. His response was he didn't want to make this a political thing because housing is such a, politically hot topic. This board is interested in focusing on teaching and learning. And Craig is correct. We cannot scatter our time on all these big issues that have a lot of political opinions out there that are important to us individually, collectively, what it may be. But this is to narrow the scope of something we can achieve for the parties we have to focus on teaching and learning. And focusing on housing is not a priority that I have heard from anyone that would support this college.
Well, we're not here tonight to make a decision on housing, but we did decide earlier to move ahead to inquire about it. And
I'm not going to support any goals.
I understand.
Yeah, I'm not going to support a goal that has housing in it. We did that last year. It consumed unnecessary time. It consumed time for Lori. We're going on our 4th president in 7 years. That is problematic.
Trustee Nielsen or Trustee, I don't know. Trustee Abeshi, did you have a comment? Thank you.
I don't think listing housing here would cause any problems because if it's a goal, you're not actually looking to get a solution per se, but you could look for solutions and just look at the problem. That doesn't mean you're going to solve it within the next 2 years or 3 years. So, because when you talk about student safety and well-being, you're talking about the general well-being of the student. If a student doesn't have housing or if the student is hungry, then the mental health is invariably going to be easily affected by that. So if you put mental health there and then you're taking out food insecurity or housing, then these are all causes of mental instability for students. So I don't know how we could alter all of this together.
Any other comments? Well, Trustee Croninger.
I would just summarize my concern is that we were trying to cut back on our goals and be realistic here, and I think we kind of went through that process, and now we're going through it again and expanding them. We could have all 11 goals under these 5 just by doing it over.
Just stop.
Well,
None of these things go away.
Here we are.
Don't go away.
There was a good suggestion from Trustee Parker that we have offline couple trustees maybe work on the revisions, keeping in mind the comments we've heard tonight to see where there might be a consensus.
So I guess my question, Kate, is what would you think you'd come up with knowing that 3 of us are not okay with having housing on the goals? So we would just have a 4-3 approval of goals?
No. Gosh, no. My suggestion would be that President Miller and Trustee Croninger get together and talk that through. Because there may be a way to kind of get at the concept of there are things that we can do around housing, including listening to what the Education Foundation survey comes back and says. And
Well, that's what we committed to do already, Kate.
I
We
think
have committed to
and-
that. And
well-
we're going to continue that.
Let
Everybody's
me
interested.
give you an example. My constituents are very concerned about housing here on the Mesa. And one of the things that they would really like us to do is to revamp our housing website. the information that we give to students around housing. And to me, that's not hugely controversial. But all that I feel like we're asking for is, can we talk about it?
Well, we could do
can
that
make
kind
it-
of thing, but we don't have resources to build housing.
That's not what this
More
says.
studies.
So then I
That's what
think-
you intoned, I'm sorry.
So then I think for
That's what
that-
I understood from what you said, Mr.
Yeah,
Lebu.
but I think that's the kind of thing that really and truly two of you could talk that through.
And I think something like that is a simple, that's an improvement of like, of success for students. It'll help students succeed if their website is a little bit more feasible to navigate. This topic has been such a time-sucking energy topic for, like I said, I've only been on this board for 7 years, and we're going on our 4th president. That is extremely problematic. And every president, this topic, because they see it as their charge to address in some way, shape, or form, has sucked time that is unnecessary. And we have a wonderful nonprofit, the Housing Authority, with a wonderful mission that can help support this. If we want to revamp the website, that is not a complicated thing. Those are all simple initiatives and suggestions that we can give, and staff, I'm sure, would love to improve that. But leaving housing on there is, what I have seen is that this has always been a push for SBCC to somehow build housing, something around housing that is not within our charter right now, our mission, our vision, or anything, much less our budget.
Well, if I may, President Miller.
Trustee Parker.
Just revisiting, for example, the 2016 bond election. One of the reasons that that election failed with a number of people that should have supported it was that they felt that Santa Barbara City College was not addressing the impact of student housing, the impact that students have on this community. And I think it's actually a real mistake if we're thinking about going forward with a bond anytime in the next 4 years to take our eye off that ball, because that will come up again. And so it's not just people that are concerned about building housing. It's people that are concerned about the impact of housing, of the lack of housing in the larger community, and how students are impacting their quality of life.
So for that, I can refer you, and you can just do Google. If you Google Lanny Epstein, Bond, SBCC, just do a quick Google search, and you will see all the editorials. And one of the ways that the community, and your constituents on the Mesa, the Washington families, the McKinley families, the Monroe families, who I have spoken to, and when you Google that, you will see that they felt that us putting a cap on international students per board policy to 1,500 was a step in that right direction to help to mitigate housing, and ending the lease with Kaplan. So that is how they wanted us to do something about housing. The concerns we heard about the bond were that we were not doing enough to help support the local students, to help the people that reside within the boundaries of the college. And so you obviously think different and you have a different perception, but the constituents that you're talking about, which are largely the families within those schools and in this neighborhood, it was that we weren't doing enough to help with students coming on in this area. They never once during that bond did we hear, or never once have I heard from the concerned citizens in this neighborhood that they want us to address housing in terms of providing housing.
Okay, I'm going to pick up on Trustee Parker's suggestion that Trustee Croninger and I work on a revision to board goal number 5, and try to take into account what comments we've heard here tonight, and our task would be to try to create something that is a consensus of the board, as difficult as that may be. Trustee Croninger, you're going to tell me you agree to?
Sure, and I would just add on to Kate's comment, I think, which is that we had 2 parts to this survey. The first part having to do with student responses on housing information, what they need, what their situation is, and the second part was asking the community. So I think that will be part of keeping our eye on that ball relative to a bond. But we separated them into 2 surveys.
Okay.
Right at the beginning.
So we're going to do that, and we'll come back with something at our next board meeting. Any other comments before we move on?
Would it be fair to say that if we have additional thoughts about that individually we could communicate with you or Marcia?
Yeah, unless Mr. Brown tells us we can't do that, but I think that's a good
we'd have to communicate with
idea.
Dr. Benjamin, but
Or we could send them to Dr. Benjamin, and she could forward.
Sure. That insulates us, correct? Okay. We're moving now to, we've already sworn in the student trustee, so now we're at 11.3. And I've read an announcement on that, so I would say our next item is 11.4, report from board members. Do any board members have anything they wish to report this evening? You're not obligated to, but Trustee Croninger.
I just wanted to mention, I believe that we had an earlier public comment to the effect that our Academic Senate President was advising the channels, and it's my understanding she's not, and has not been during the duration of the, her role as Academic Senate President. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you for the opportunity to clarify that. If you remember in my first presentation to you, I told you I had identified a very clear conflict of interest if I had continued to do both roles. Excuse me. So for the duration of my time as Academic Senate President, which was all of last year, and for the following year, I have stepped out of that position. Joshua Molina, very well-respected journalist in Santa Barbara, has filled in as adjunct professor and will continue to do so for the next year. I am holding on to the position of department chair. It's an administrative position, but I have absolutely nothing to do with the day-to-day operations of the student newspaper. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other? Trustee Abud?
Just want to clarify that Ms. Adams' comments about me were untrue, but I have in the past already.
Anything else from board members?
Just a comment.
Trustee Husline.
My comment is a commendation to our superintendent president in terms of her philosophy of how to approach the budget. I mean, you were very clear that we're looking not just for low-hanging fruit that went away a long time ago, but we're looking to trim the budget in ways that do not affect people. And I think I want to support that. I think that's exactly where we need to be.
Trustee Nelson.
Yeah, I want to add to what Peter said, and without repeating anything he said. I think the focus that you bring to increasing efficiency and continuing Dr. Beebe's emphasis on efficiency as a whole, I'd like to thank everybody who's participated and contributed help and advice to our managers and staff, or to our administration. And if you get any other good ideas on how we can be more efficient without hurting our output quality, please speak up. And thank you for what's been done so far.
Thank you. Any other comments? Before we adjourn to closed session, I'd like to just briefly discuss schedule, because we often in our closed session and then we report any actions and we disperse. So our next scheduled board meeting is July 11th, and as Dr. Benjamin reported to us some time ago, she's not available for that meeting, and I believe I've heard that Veronica Trustee Gallardo's not going to miss that meeting. Is there anybody else who has a conflict on July 11th?
Yeah, I will be in Puerto Vallarta for a graduation ceremony for basically a goddaughter graduating from medical school. And I've known about this for 30 days, and I have mentioned it.
Okay,
I won't be
so let me suggest this, that I guess I'd like to take a canvass of people's schedule on July 18th. We don't have a meeting on July. There's only one. There's only one meeting in July. So instead of July 11th, perhaps we can do July 18th. Does that work for
I think so.
board members? Okay.
Would that make it possible for those of you? Okay, cool.
So looks like we're all here on July 18th. So I guess that should be our next meeting.
Do you need a motion?
I don't know, do we need a,
On the June, no wonder it wasn't making any sense to me.
Changing the date, but
That's August.
Why
That's
don't
stuck.
you go ahead and do
I'm back. Yeah, it's good.
If,
why don't you take a vote?
I'm concerned about taking a vote when it's not
It's
agendized.
not agenda
Oh,
as
it's
an
not.
action item. I think they can change the date without taking a vote.
Yeah, it's just adding a special meeting to
the
it.
We'll
18th.
give you a direction. Can we make a formal resolution of it? And we'll call that.
Just for fun?
Got it.
Okay.
so we're okay?
I'll post it on the website
Hey, that's a big relief.
tonight.
Thank you.
Okay.
I would have called you from Maui.
So I think we do need a motion to adjourn to closed session.
I move we adjourn to closed session.
Is there a second? Somebody second?
Second.
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.